Hi, welcome to Cracking the Code, practical tips on media literacy for parents in the digital age. This training is developed by the Public Good Projects in partnership with the CDC Foundation. During this training, we will cover screen use in 2023, how accurate information makes for safe and supportive schools, the role of information in the digital age, cracking the code on media literacy, why media literacy matters, how to have productive conversations, and helpful resources. Let's begin. One of the hottest topics among parents these days is how they deal with the type of media their children see and interact with. And it can be a lot. A Pew Research report from 2022 said that 97% of children aged 13 to 17 use the internet every day. Screen use of any kind has skyrocketed too. A Common Sense Media survey from 2022 reported that children aged 8 to 12 spend 5.5 hours a day on screens, while teens average over 7 hours of screen time a day. Because children spend so much time on screens and online, it's more important than ever to teach them the skills to navigate media. The good news is that parents agree. A 2023 study from the CDC Foundation found that at least 90% of parents surveyed thought it was important for schools to teach students how to verify information on the internet, determine if a news story or article is biased, and look for multiple sources to back up claims. Parents also agree that their children need to know how to ask questions to figure out if information is accurate and identify false information on social media. But how do parents support their children's learning in this area, both inside and outside of the school building? That is why we're bringing this training to you. Whether you are a novice or an expert at navigating online platforms, this training will provide you with the opportunity to not only build your own media literacy skills to help you become a better consumer of online information, it will also empower you by giving you the tools and resources needed to support your child's learning, thus helping them to think more deeply about the information they read online. Let's take a moment to think about how media literacy can be helpful in the real world. Every day, you read online articles and news stories that cover everything from the funny to the serious, and some of those may be on topics related to school or education. What do you do if you're reading an article that could have a real impact on your child's school experience? Imagine that you're online in a chat group or on a social media platform and see an article or posting about your child's school or about education in general. It could be about what is the right amount of recess time, healthy school lunches, health education, or social and emotional learning. Overall, it's got your attention and you're trying to figure out what it means for your child or even what it means for your school and community. Sometimes these articles spark debates, and in many of these debates, not everyone has the same opinion, and that's okay. What is important is that parents strive to understand the point of views of others and use accurate information, even if in the end we don't agree with their point of view. That's why it's important that parents take the time to understand whether the information forming their opinions is accurate, complete, looking out for all children. How do you do this? Having strong media literacy skills is a great start. Media impacts lives today in almost every way, 24/7, through TV, apps, websites, news, magazines, billboards, radio, social media, advertising, and more. The amount of information experienced each day can be incredibly overwhelming. The digital age has changed many things about how we evaluate and process the information read online. Media literacy can be broken into two parts. First, media means communication and information. Media is all the ways by which we consume information daily. This means news and radio, of course, but it also includes music, movies, television, magazines, and social media. Next, media literacy is a set of skills that helps you analyze the content of media messages that you receive. And media literacy is all about asking questions. As parents, you probably think about how much and what types of media your child consumes. It's important to carefully consider and to be skeptical about what they read, see, and hear online. But Think about all the types of media you engage with on a daily basis. Are you applying the same standards to your own media consumption? Growing up, we learn how to read and become literate. In previous decades, it was through books, magazines, and encyclopedias, and for the most part, the foundation of people's literacy was based on words printed on paper. Now, there's a need for a 21st century approach to digital literacy. Today, we need media literacy. This training will teach important skills to help you in your own day-to-day life and allow you the opportunity to model these for your children. That way, we can help raise children who will become adults who ask the right questions and know that it's okay to question the information they see. Now that you know what media literacy is, let's dive into the next phase of this training, where we will cover 4 simple steps that you can use to help you carefully consider the news stories or articles you're reading online. First, think about the source. The source of your information is important. You need to know who created the message to really understand the purpose of the message. You might ask things like, what credentials, education, affiliation, or experience does this creator have to write on this topic? What can you tell from the domain of the website where the information has been published? Is there contact information? Does the URL reveal anything about the author or source? For example, does it end with .com, .edu, .gov, or .org? In order to better understand these questions in context, let's look at an example. This example is a news story that claims milk from school lunches is causing children to glow in the dark. And this seems to be a rather serious situation because, per this news article, one sibling who shares a room with a glow-in-the-dark impacted child says it's too bright to sleep with their sister. In the example, the news is coming from the local Herald, which, at first glance, looks like a normal news website. It has everything you might expect from a news site, from the headline to the lead image to the advertisements on the bottom of the page. But let's look a bit closer. If you consider the source and you need to try to understand who exactly the local Herald is, let's start with the author byline. Instead of having an author or journalist's name, the byline just reads posted by the local Herald. That's very vague and raises some suspicions. Additionally, it's important to consider the source's bias. Information can be a political, ideological, cultural, religious, institutional, or personal bias. It's important to assess whether it is a fact, opinion, or propaganda. Let's learn more about the source to assess this information. Going back to the local Herald example, when we check the About page, it's worrisome. Any reputable source would ensure that the information about both the author and the publication was easy to find. Instead, here it just says, the local Herald is on the lookout for top stories in your area and across the world. We accept viewer submissions, so please contact us if you have a story. It might surprise you to know that while the name of the publication was changed, this is the exact language of an About page taken from a false news site that often spreads misinformation. This is why it's so important to understand your source. In this case, you don't know who wrote the piece of media you're reading, and you don't know anything about who works at the local Herald or even where they allegedly report from. All of these are major red flags. Let's move on to our second tip. Next, let's evaluate the actual information to check for accuracy. What does it mean to be accurate? Accuracy is all about reliability, truthfulness, and the correctness of content. When you evaluate the information and check for accuracy, you can ask things like, is this information supported by evidence? Where does this information come from? Are there other sources of information to back it up? Has it been peer reviewed? Think of peer review as a quality control process where work is scrutinized by experts in the same field. It's to make sure that published works are valid, original, and of high quality. This provides more confidence that the work can be trusted. Let's go back to the example and see if the author credits their sources. The article cites several so-called sources, including unnamed parents, someone on Twitter, and a parent on Reddit. The lack of names or links out to other sites is a problem. Reputable news organizations will almost always cite names and sources when reporting on a story. There's also no source for the rather concerning image of this child with glowing milk. If the image was reputable, you'd have a photographer or source name. In this case, there is neither. Another red flag for accuracy is to check for grammatical or spelling errors. In this case, there are many. Bad media often has spelling or grammatical errors because the writing may come from bots, artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT, or content manufacturers that reside far from the US. These sites don't hire editors or fact checkers to ensure that things are correct. One easy way to evaluate the accuracy of the information you consume is to check whether there are other sources to back it up. You can see whether a piece of information is floating alone in the abyss or whether there are multiple sources from a variety of viewpoints backing up the same information. With today's network of news sources, it's easy to confirm articles and see if anyone else is reporting on the same information. In this example, a quick Google search for glow-in-the-dark milk doesn't bring much up. The first results show a lot of glow-in-the-dark products for sale, but nothing on this news item. One way to be sure that there aren't any reputable news stories is to click on the news filter in your online search. In this example, there's a news story about Gen Z and milk, and a few stories about milk and skin, but that's it. There are no other stories on school milk causing students to glow. If milk was making children glow in the dark, there would be plenty of sources and publications running with this story. Another part of checking the accuracy of the information is to check when the information was created. Ask yourself, how old is too old? Does it matter if the information is recent? Has the material been updated or revised? Are the links functional? In this example, it matters a lot if the news is current. If food or milk at schools was impacting students, this will require immediate changes to the company providing the products, the need to identify which students were involved, and potentially even the need for medical treatment. But in this story, the original story was posted on May 19, 2003, and has never been updated. Also, there are no links out to other sources. So in this case, the story is old, it hasn't been updated, and none of the information is accurate. Let's continue to assess the information and move on to our third tip. Now, consider how the information is trying to attract your attention and why. This means that you need to look at the methods and goals of the information. You can ask, what techniques are used to attract my attention, and why might someone use these techniques? Whenever you consume information, you should be cautious about emotional appeals. Especially on social media, posts are built looking for a reaction. In this example, the local Herald shared this old story in a new post on May 15, 2023 that said, "Your children are in danger. We've got the full report." This is on top of the already sensationalist headline telling parents to beware. Remember that on social media, posts are looking for a reaction, and the algorithms reward these reactions, not the truthfulness of the article. In this example, the fear-based caption and headline are clearly clickbait, hoping to get a reaction out of readers. They're looking for a click to the false news site. This is why you should be cautious if something makes you immediately angry, sad, worried, or fearful. The social media post is also showing the URL of the local Herald, which is localherald24.com. Many unreliable websites add numbers or weird spelling changes to otherwise reputable names to try to appear trustworthy. There's a whole industry of unreliable, false news sites that try to make themselves look like real local news sites. After analyzing the techniques, it's important to consider why the media was made or why others are sharing the information. When you inquire about people's motives, you can get a better sense of whether things are accurate or biased. You can ask things like, was the information created to inform, teach, sell, entertain, or persuade? Do the authors or sponsors make their intentions or purpose clear? Does the point of view appear objective and impartial? It's also always a good idea to ask, is someone making money? In this example, you've already searched on the local Herald's About page, and that didn't reveal much about the motives of the local Herald. However, you can see that some people on social media are spreading the story because they have a vested interest in harming the milk industry. A person named Chris P. Bacon shared the dubious glow-in-the-dark milk story on social media, and Jane asked in the comments, "Wait, don't you own a juice company that's trying to sell apple juice in schools?" Clearly, Chris is using an inaccurate, sensational story to push his own agenda: juice. This shows that even if you can't determine the motives of the source behind a piece of media, you can still look to understand why others might be sharing the information. Let's move to our fourth and final tip. The last step you should take when considering media is to think holistically. This means that you ask whether something is the full picture. You can ask, what lifestyles, values, and points of view are presented in this message? What's missing? Are you hearing only negative things? Only positive? There may be a perspective or side of the story that is being left out. Who is it for? Who isn't it for? People often get stuck in online worlds where like-minded people echo each other. This is called confirmation bias, or the tendency to only believe information if it reinforces the things you already believe. That's because social media platforms use your likes and shares to give you more of the same content. Everyone has bias, and that's totally normal and okay. The important thing is to recognize the bias you bring to the media you consume and to look for information outside of your normal circles. Additionally, you should consider how the information could be interpreted. Ask how others might interpret the information. Could another parent view the information in an alternative way? How might different people understand this message differently from you? In this example, there are clearly some problems when you pull back and look at the big picture. The story doesn't discuss the school's perspective or have any comment from a school representative. There are no quotes or information from pediatricians or other doctors, which is odd. If milk was making students glow in the dark, you can bet that doctors would weigh in. And while you already know that there are no named parents, you can tell it's leaving out perspectives because the story is entirely negative. It could be from someone who is already angry at the school or maybe has a grudge against the lunch lady. All of these things are red flags. Let's review everything that we've learned. It's important to remember that anyone can create media and put it online, but not everyone or everything is reputable. To sum up the 4 steps, we want to remember to check the sources, evaluate the information, consider how and why someone has made the media, and then think about the big picture and how the information could be interpreted. Good information or media has a source that is recognized as a reputable subject area expert, provides facts that are consistent across other sources, uses a URL that ends with .edu, .gov, .info, or reputable.com, cites and quotes others, and in turn, they are often cited or quoted, is clear whether something is a fact or an opinion, provides credit when needed, for example, in photos, quotes, etc. Bad information, including the example about the glow-in-the-dark milk, might have all or any of the following: an unnamed author and a site lacking credentials, a headline that is hard to believe, sensational, and pulling at the emotions of readers, be on social media and a website, but not on other news sites or any other searches, old or outdated information or have no date at all, poor spelling or grammar, items marked as sponsored content or advertisement, missing sources, perspectives, and the information that was included was vaguely described, name-calling, or unfounded accusations. So, now that you know how to recognize the pitfalls in bad media, let's explore why this matters. At the highest level, when you are media literate, you are empowered to ask better questions. You can make sound decisions rooted in fact and evidence. You are better able to decipher bias from reality. In the context of helping students and in the school environment, it means parents should be able to better understand how school and education-related information may impact their child or their child's classmates and the school as a whole, ensure that the information that forms their opinions is timely, accurate, and isn't coming from unreliable sources, see multiple perspectives in debates over school and educated-related topics. As someone who is media literate, you can consider multiple sides of the story. You can understand why certain people are advocating for different things and what their bias might be. You might even be able to bring people together in a discussion, advocating for their own child's well-being without unintentionally hurting other students. Model media literacy for their child. This approach empowers both parents and children to ask important questions about the information they read online. Everyone can dig a little deeper into the information they consume. Finally, we're going to end this training with some additional guidance about how to apply some of these tactics in real-life conversations. Once you've started asking more questions and improved your media literacy, this doesn't mean that conflict disappears. You might run into a parent, friend, coworker, or even a family member who has not taken the same steps. It's natural for disagreements to happen, and it's important to keep conversations productive. Here are some tips on how to keep things civil, whether you're communicating online or have a face-to-face discussion with other parents. Always consider your own bias. It's easy to write off others as ill-informed, but if you start with recognizing your own bias, you can approach people with a more positive attitude. It's important to listen with empathy. When our values are challenged, it is hard to resist the urge to speak out and correct others' views. If you listen with the goal of understanding another person's values and not trying to prove your own point, conversations will be productive. Use words of acknowledgement, positive language, and open-ended questions. Start statements with, "I understand that," "I appreciate your point on," or "I think you're trying to say." Sometimes it can be helpful to try to summarize someone's statements back to them to ensure that you've got it right. Also, ask open-ended questions, such as those that start with how, what, or why. Don't lump other people together into a monolithic group. People might surprise you. When you assume you know how someone is going to think or act, you're also limiting any possibility of change. Start with the assumption that people are individuals. Remember that all parents want their children to be safe, healthy, and successful. Even when parents disagree, acknowledging your shared values can keep discussions productive. What's the common ground in a discussion? How can you build upon that common ground to move the conversation forward? Did this training inspire you to want to learn more about media literacy and ask questions? Good. That's the first step. There's a variety of organizations dedicated to helping parents with their own media literacy and raising children to do the same. A few options are listed on this slide and can be found in our corresponding one-pager. These resources include the National Association for Media Literacy Education's Parent Media Literacy Guide, the News Literacy Project website, which contains helpful tips, tools, and quizzes, Media Power Youth's Training for Educators and Parents for Teaching Students. Thank you for taking the time to watch this training. We hope that you walk away feeling empowered and utilize your new skills in media literacy.